feedback that you guys gave from the last meeting was you want to talk more. So we have so many good things that we want to share with you about our schools and all the things we're doing, but we also want to hear from you and give you the opportunity to ask us questions. So we tried to build that in a little bit more, but please feel free to, if there's a question you have in the middle of while somebody's talking tonight or explaining something, please stop us, raise your hand, let us know, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions because we want to make this a conversation. So the purpose of tonight, we're going to try to make a theme around each one. Next time we'll do the budget. We know there are a lot of feedback questions about budget, so next session will be entirely devoted to budget and finance questions. But this one is just about all the things that schools do now as opposed to back when schools were first started. So in the beginning, schools really just taught the basic reading, writing, and arithmetic. You know, there wasn't a lot of extra stuff. But now schools do so much more. They're really the glue that holds communities together in a lot of ways. So we don't just teach students how to read and write and do math anymore. You know, we provide mental health services. We feed them while they're here. We send food with a lot of them when they go home. We provide clothing when they don't have it. Social workers services. We have nurses on staff, SROs at every school to keep them safe. You know, there are so many different aspects of things that we do as a school system now. So what we want to do today is highlight some of the different areas, and the three main ones we will highlight tonight are our Office of Student Achievement, which we talk about what we do with testing, curriculum, those types of things, literacy, and then we will talk about student services with Mr. Phillips, and he'll talk to you about a lot of those extra things that I just mentioned. And then we will talk about school safety with Mr. Lust, and then answer any additional questions that you have. All right, so student achievement, that's me and Miss Haynes. We do the Office of School Improvement, so I do the middle and high schools primarily, and she does the elementary schools. So she's going to start talking about early literacy.
Several years ago, Georgia noticed that with our NAEP scores, the National Literacy Scores, only 34% of our kids were actually proficient in reading by third grade. And so the legislators got together and they saw that that was a great need in Georgia to focus on literacy. So with that, they created several bills. The first one being the HB 48 bill that dealt with dyslexia, that we were required to have a screener that could identify characteristics. We don't diagnose, but if there's areas of need, then we're responsible for providing interventions for our children and supporting them, as well as giving professional development for our teachers so that they know strategies and skills to be able to support those children. And then Senate Bill 211 is where they established a literacy council of 30 members throughout the state of Georgia that comes together and makes decisions and works with districts on making those decisions on what's best for the state of Georgia and the students for literacy. And then the last one that's truly affected us has been HB 538, where we are required to adopt a high quality instructional materials for our core content requirement that we've done for elementary K through 5. Also, we were required to do a universal screener, and those screeners just is to identify any areas of need in literacy that have any gaps. We were required to also provide with those, for those students to fill in those gaps, research-based interventions and a specific time each day to provide those interventions. And with those, with formative assessments, and we do those benchmarks, we have, with our curriculum, we have a formative assessments that looks to see, are our kids making those advancements? Are they learning and mastering those skills that's needed for them to be able to read and be proficient? And then providing professional learning. And so we've provided letters for the science of reading to all of our teachers. They finished up K through 5. We've provided our new teachers. Our pre-K teachers has also gone through it. And then we have 6 facilitators in our district that can teach the new teachers as they come through with the science of reading.
And I'm just going to add on to what she said.
What is your proficiency level here in Catoosa County?
This year, our third graders were at 71%.
Okay, so I just want to add to this by saying that although these are all really good things, so these are all great things that the state has said, hey, you're going to identify students who are dyslexic, you're going to adopt a high quality instructional program. All great things. Nobody can argue that. However, no funding came with that from the state. So, high quality instructional materials. Anybody want to guess what that cost for us to adopt it locally as taxpayers for our K through 5 students this year?
$100,000.
Mrs. Haynes, how much was it?
It was $1 million. And with that, we were given specific ones that the state had vetted using specific rubrics of requirements, and we were required to use those or use a rubric that they provided to be able to choose the curriculum.
And we did not choose the most expensive.
No, we did not. We chose one that was a little more expensive, but was very good. It was truly high quality. It would be the rigor that we needed for our students to make sure that they were achieving.
And it's a great program. Like, our students are being successful with it. It's difficult. It's been difficult for our elementary teachers to adopt this year and change their entire curriculum, the way we teach. It's all based on the science behind reading. So again, all really good stuff, but very costly.
And our teachers have worked so hard to be able to learn it and use it in the classroom as they're working with their students. And it's been challenging for our kids because we know that it's more rigorous, a lot more is involved in the learning. And then this is really what our literacy plan is. One of the requirements is that each district have a literacy plan on how they're going to implement the required bills. And so we have adopted Benchmark Advanced. That is the curriculum that she mentioned that we're using. This is our first year of implementation. We've also, with Reading 2.0 instruction, where Jennifer Saravallo, these are just reading strategies that's used in the classroom that teachers can support students when they are struggling, or if it's a concept they don't understand. It's not a curriculum, they're just strategies. And so we've brought in one of their specialists. Last year they worked with K through 2. This year they're doing 3 through 5. Dr. Butler is also working with 6 through 10, or 6 through 12 to help. She's also helping them, and she goes in and she actually models and coaches for the teachers so that they can support the students and know how that works. And then we have reading profiles that after we do the diagnostics and the screeners, we know exactly what skill that the child either has mastered or not, and that helps with our individualized instruction and how we can meet the needs of those students. We also saw that this Benchmark Advanced, it lacked the depth that we needed for phonics, and we know that in the past, if you look at the science of reading, that is an area that we have put aside over the years with balanced literacy, and that we needed a really strong phonics program for Catoosa County and our students. So we have implemented UFly Phonics, and it is rigorous, it is a fast pace, but we are showing great progress so far with our students this year. And the teachers, again, it's been difficult with them having to learn this curriculum and implement it in the classroom. They've worked so hard. We've got the reading intervention expectations where we're modeling. We have an RTI coordinator that works with our schools, and she supports the teachers and making sure that each child is making progress through what we call an ASIP program, Academic Support Instructional Team, that meets once every 6 weeks. They review the data and make sure the children are making progress, and if they're not, they create a plan and what needs to be done next. How can we support those children? And of course, the last is we've made sure that we're having all of our student teachers be trained in the science of reading.
Any questions about this?
What is RTI?
What is RTI?
Response to intervention. So we're making sure that when the student's struggling, that we are giving them the instruction that they need, whether it's teacher instruction or whether it's a program, different skills that they need to support them.
And what that kind of looks like is, if you're in a classroom, we teach it the first time to everybody, and then we're going to identify who didn't learn it the first time. So maybe that's a gifted learner, and maybe it's a learner who struggles often. So then we're going to pull those kids back into a small group, and we're going to reteach that skill again. And then we're going to have another group of kids for math and ELA that we know struggle a lot, and so they're far behind. So we're going to provide them with even more additional support. So that's the response to intervention.
And it's a fluid group, and our goal is that we teach them, we pull them back, we teach them what needs to be done, and then the groups change as they're learning.
Do you do reading fluency testing?
We do.
Do you have volunteers for that?
We actually have where we've got teams at each school that they go through and they do their reading fluency. You know, we'd love to have volunteer readers, and then once a week, I know a lot of them do just the 1-minute reads where they sit with students and they just practice that fluency. So that would be wonderful.
That's the first time I heard about it, the volunteer reading. So that's some of the things that needs to come out. Well, I go to the Ringo Middle School, and there's a volunteer coordinator. I ask all the time, but there's nothing that's come back now. My granddaughter was in freshman. That coordinator, I was there at least once or twice a month helping do stuff. But several people have asked me, have we heard anything? And it's not. So you're missing opportunities.
That's one thing we can work on. We can work with our media specialists in elementary as well as our parent engagement coordinators at our Title I schools.
Because when we came for registration, that person had nothing at the booth talking about volunteering program. There was nothing when we came in. Now the first year she was out front. That's the first person you walked by.
Sure.
So just.
And one place that we really need a lot of volunteers, and Mr. Phillips is going to talk about this a little too, but mentors. We can always use people to mentor students, and that might just be coming and meeting with them for lunch once a week and talking to them. Some students don't have somebody checking on them all the time and saying, how are you doing? Are you getting your work done? How's it going at home? How are you feeling emotionally? They don't have somebody just asking those questions that a typical parental role would take care of. So we need those people desperately, and we try to advertise that, but we can always do a better job, and we'll put that on our list of things.
So it's
to
good
look at.
feedback. So thank you. And same thing with the fluency as well.
I was just gonna say the Retired Teachers Association.
Cursive
They
writing.
understand reading fluency.
That'd be beautiful for them to come in.
I don't know if
I
there's
can
an
reach
active
out.
group here in Catoosa County.
We
but-
do. We have a really good.
Okay,
Mhm.
they need to know. They need to be asked to come in.
And he had a question about cursive writing. So cursive writing came out of the state curriculum a few years ago, so we only teach what the state tells us that we teach. But it is being added back into the elementary curriculum for next year. So starting next year, cursive will be added back in.
In our curriculum, Benchmark Advance includes it.
Okay, so tell me more about the reading, the volunteers. Now, is that something that you need on the primary level also? So I'm the parent coordinator
Right.
at Battlefield Primary.
Yes.
So this is the first I've heard of this as well. No one's come to me and said, hey, we need a volunteer for these days for math fluency tests. We're doing math right now in the school. And I've not heard.
Map reading fluency, the
Yeah, right,
assessment, our teachers,
Right,
that would be
okay,
something that would need to be done by our teachers.
I'm just curious, yeah, I haven't heard.
Media specialists, and that's something we can work with, and we've mentioned it to our principals, and
Yeah.
it maybe just
I've
didn't
not
get.
heard of that yet, and I am literally the parent coordinator at the primary
That's something
school.
that we can share with our parent, and I'll get Christy Jablonski, I'll get her to share that. Just ideas, but your media specialist, that's what we've always encouraged. I know when I was principal at Boynton, that was one of my favorite things to do, is we got readers in for the media center, and we asked for volunteers to come in and read, either a pair read or even help with our first grade,
We do have
even
a
doing
few
flashcards. And I think that's what maybe that a lot of it's already, some of it's happening, some of it's not, and that's something maybe we need to coordinate better
Yeah, I would
and
love-
get that
yeah,
going.
Because we do have a lot of parents that would love to come in and
Sure.
do reading, and that's not something that I've seen a need for, like, that's like the case.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep. We'll work on that one, yep.
All right, so graduation rate, we're not going to spend long on this. You guys saw that, but that's something that's very important to us as a district, and it's important that that score is accurate and reflects all of our students. And so the way our high schools really kind of track this is they have data rooms, and we can't go in the data room, but we'll kind of walk by it, and we'll show you an example right here of how it functions. But every student has a lot of information in Infinite Campus. But you don't pull up Infinite Campus and look up student by student. Like, it's really hard to see everything all at one time. You only look it up if you need to know something in particular. So what these data walls do is they take all of the information, every piece of information that we know about every student, and they put it on a little magnet. So every student's going to have a magnet at the high school level, and the middle schools have these as well, with the student's name on it, and then they have keys right here. So if they are, an EL student, if they're red radar, which means they are falling behind all the time, they're in danger of not graduating at the high school level. If they have a special education IP, if they have a 504, if they're gifted, even if they're in a sport, they might have a little softball, because we know those coaches have great power over the students. So if we see a student that's failing, significantly or often, then we're going to contact that coach, and it's just good to see that little soccer ball or that softball, and it helps us to remember, like, oh yeah, they're on that athletic team. If they're on our Catoosa attendance review team or CART for attendance purposes, all of this is coded on their magnet. And then they have boards for each grade level in the data room, and the teachers go in there weekly and move the magnets. So if a student's failing math, they're going to move them to the section where, you know, these students are failing ELA, these are failing math, failing science, failing social studies. And then there's a section where they're failing multiple subjects. So those are the ones we really typically focus on. And if you're failing more than one subject, then you're a high-risk student, and you're not being successful. So then, not only do they track this, but our teachers have meetings regularly, weekly, bi-weekly, where they look at this list of students and they discuss it, and they say kid by kid, you know, what's the problem, what solutions can we come up with, who has a relationship with this student, what services can we add. So these are things that our teachers are doing weekly, above and beyond, you know, teaching that reading, writing, and arithmetic.
You said that's at every school?
Every secondary school, and do any elementary schools have a data wall? Yes.
Some elementary I know do.
They do.
I think so too.
Not all, but some. A lot of them, if not, do it.
And they're utilized in different ways. So the high schools are obviously using it to track who's on track to graduate. So we want to catch those kids and, you know, provide every support that we can to get them back on track. The middle and the elementary schools are going to use it more to see who's mastering the content, who's passing their classes, who's falling behind, because those are predictors of high school success. So they utilize it a little bit differently at the different grade levels. All right, so as we wrap up our section, these are some questions you guys had last time. And these first three questions all have to do with how we measure success and achievement. So I'm going to show you a website, and we'll send this out in the link. But it's through our RESA, and it's a public dashboard. And you can go here, and it tracks all of the milestones. So all of the state test assessments, you can see how we perform versus other schools in our RESA district. So you can click on for English Language Arts. You can see we're performing right here. Out of all the districts in our RESA, you can see where Catoosa County falls. And this right here, this 42.53%, that seems kind of low. But the state average for students who have a level 3 or 4 is at the top here. So it's at 40, and then you can see the RESA average is at 41. So we're outperforming both the state and the RESA. And then you can also look, this is measuring, it's a very hard test, it's very difficult. So the level 3s and 4s are students who got everything they need to know, above and beyond. And if you click here and click on developing and above, this includes students who are really close. So those level 2 students who maybe they have most things, but they're just kind of on the bubble and they're not quite, you know, everything they needed for that grade level, but they're really close. That's going to give you a more accurate number as to who's on grade level or close to grade level. So that's going to be closer to 74% of our students for K-12 or 3 to 12 is what's measured here. And then you can also look, this is something that I think we can be proud of in Catoosa County, is progress. So how are our students doing as compared to our peers in our surrounding districts for the progress they're making annually? So we are only Haralson County and Tri-City, which, I mean, you can make the argument that those two aren't exactly comparable to us in some ways. Only those two districts are their students making greater progress in a given year than our students.
What does that mean, greater progress of what?
Okay, so when they measure progress at the state level, if you scored, let's just say you scored a 525 on your ELA milestones test, like that's the scale score that you received. They'll take every student in the state who was the next year who scored a 525 last year and kind of line them up. And then they'll see, okay, compared to last year, all the students who scored the same score last year, where did they fall on that number line this year? So if they fall in the 0 to 40% range, you would get a level 1 score, you know, this percent a level 2, here a level 3, and then over here a level 4, because they're making more progress than all their other peers across the state who scored the same score last year.
So that test is given yearly?
Yes, yes. And this to me is really the best indicator of, in a lot of ways, we're comparing the same kid based on other kids who performed the same as them last year. So progress is always a really, really important score to us because it's apples to apples and not apples to oranges, comparing different sets of kids. But we will send you the link to this.
Isn't there a test at the beginning of the year to see where they are at the beginning and then at the end and do it again to see how they progress?
So we give benchmark tests, which are internal tests that we give. So the milestones is kind of our autopsy for the year, is how we refer to it, because we can't really change anything at that point for the year. But we give benchmark assessments 3 times a year. So we give them at the beginning of the year. We're giving one right now in this window right before Christmas, and then we'll give it again at the end of the year. And that tells us an internal measurement, so we can do course correction throughout the year. And we can know, is this student right here, is he growing? Is he not growing? How's he doing related to his peers before they get to that autopsy test at the end, which is the milestones.
So that benchmark is your benchmark on the student.
Yes. No, we don't create it. It's a benchmark that we use, but it's all internal. It's not,
That's
from the
what I'm
state.
looking
Yeah.
for. Okay.
Our teachers use it and they talk about it and meet about it. Okay. All right, and then Ms. Haynes, you want to answer those last 2 questions?
Yes, and then looking at how we balance that technology in the traditional classroom instruction, we know that we've got to have it balanced because we've got to be engaging. It provides more resources for our teachers. They're able to implement more things for the students. It allows us for more personalized learning. And actually our new standards, they're incorporating that multimodality, which is branching out with like podcasts and different things that we have on the internet. And it just allows up-to-date and more recent resources for our students. And then our next question is, what is the state's role in determining the curriculum? The state, when they have to adopt those new standards, they look at the national standards for that content area, and then the state gets together with a group. They pull teachers from each grade level in each content area, and they look at the national standards and create state standards that meet the needs of our students and what they should know for that grade level. And in that, as they're collaborating and working together, they set those standards, they push them out to teachers throughout the state and give them an opportunity for feedback. They have so long to provide feedback, give input. That team gets back together, they collaborate, make any changes that needs to be suggested, and then that goes to the state board for adoption. We have those state standards that we're required to teach, but we have the flexibility to be able to choose what resources and curriculum that we want to be able to teach the standards that are required by the state.
One question to that, then how is the federal role in determining the state role?
The federal actually allows you to have your own specific state as long as you're looking at what's nationally norm standards per content area and what's research based out there. So they require each state to have their own adopted standards based off the national, like reading content area standards, or the national science standards, or math standards that's been developed by research. But that's a requirement per state, is to have state required standards.
I guess the other question is, where do they come up with these questions to determine national standards? Who does that? Is there an organization, or is
The
it?
Department of Ed brings
So
in their
they
people
determine-
and works in per content area.
Yeah, so they determine that too.
But then we have the opportunity as a state to have those as a guide, but not use those particular ones to create our own. And that's how they develop the Georgia standards, as well as the new ones that's just come about.
Okay.
It's teachers, our own teachers, that's had the
That was
ability.
my point. Is the teachers doing it, or is it bureaucrats doing it?
This is actually the teachers, the
Okay.
collaboration. They went into in-depth for our new standards that's coming out for ELA and math. The state really went into in-depth opportunities to allow teachers input. And in fact, our math got changed altered a little bit with the curriculum this past year, because as teachers were teaching, they gave more feedback and had more opportunity to go back and share with the state on changes that needed to happen.
Sir, I was involved for 6 years on a state committee here in Georgia, and you work hard, and it is a lot of, you've got somebody who represents the littlest counties, the richest counties, from Savannah to Catoosa to Lowndes to Cook to everywhere else. And we're all in a room together for the very first time. And we work from sun up to sundown. And they're throwing questions at us and all. It's intense, but it's fun. It's inspiring. It's enrichment. Just hearing from other things. There's a lot that goes into it.
I understand.
Yeah.
I worked in a hospital engineering environment where you got bureaucrats who knows nothing about what you're trying to manage. And that was my question, because I
Well, the
wasn't sure.
bureaucrats bring us in.
They do, yeah. And we're glad they use teachers.
All right, Mr. Phillips is going to talk